Welcome to 247 Real Talk. I'm your host, Julian Perry. It's a pleasure to be here with you once again for another episode of the 247 Real Talk podcast. I hope you had a great week. I had a pretty good week until the last, I would say, 24 hours. That have been pretty challenging. I'll tell you a little bit about it real quick. I usually record on Wednesday nights, as most of you know that listen to my podcast. It's Thursday, March 14th. The podcast air at Friday morning at 5 a.m. So it's going to be a long evening as I edit and publish. You might notice a difference in the lighting in the studio tonight. I can't get it dialed in right. I had it dialed in perfectly last night and I was about to record my episode when my primary HD recorder, SSD HD recorder that I record the podcast in raw resolution. For those of you who know a bit about photography and videography, it died. It's a Ninja Atomos 5 I've had for many years. It died. In addition to that, I had done a software upgrade to my switcher and didn't realize that it had changed drastically a lot of the settings and removed some things, and because it was a complete overhaul. And so I have a backup, a B-roll recording that is done locally on the switcher, and then when I tried to use it, the audio was completely unusable. So here I am again recording twice for this week, same episode. It's going to be entitled, "Be Careful What You Eat, because you just might die or it just might kill you." So if that sounds interesting enough for you, and hopefully it does, and hopefully you want to hear where I'm coming from, sit back, relax, and I'll be right back with you. So welcome back to 247 Real Talk podcast. Like I said, my name is Julian Perry. I'm the host of this show. For those of you who are brand new, who every week I see I'm getting new listeners, and I'm so appreciative for it. So for those of you who are brand new, welcome to the podcast. Hope you stay. Hope you enjoy the conversations. Hope you become empowered and enriched and ready to move forward and make a difference and create a group and join a group and be part of a movement that has to fight against what's going on in this world and what's going on in so many areas of our lives that they're dragging us down, and try to create a not just a livable environment, but something there that we can thrive and our children and our grandchildren can thrive and still have a chance at life. So before I start off this week's episode, which is, be careful what you eat because you just might die or just might kill you, I want to touch real quick on my episode from last week. If you recall, I spoke about the health companies, healthcare, the insurance companies. I spoke about these healthcare companies being so much about the bottom line that they put profit over patient, that they burden patients with bills that are normally covered by insurance. I gave you a whole episode about my personal experiences and how it turned out that after being chased down and harassed by a company, Apria, it turned out that the error was theirs, and then they didn't even have the common decency to call me back once it was resolved. They told me I should call them, which I'm not doing. But the reason I'm doing the recap is because after that episode, someone reached out to me, a good friend of mine reached out to me, and he said, I heard your episode. He said about 6 or 7 years ago, he had surgery. Now, when you go for surgery, hospitals go through a protocol, right? Not just a protocol of prepping you for the surgery, but they go through a billing protocol. They want to know how to get paid. And so as far as he knew, insurance covered it 6 or 7 years ago. I mean, even if he was 100% sure that they covered it, and even if you weren't 100%, let's say you were 95% sure, after year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6, pretty much sure. Here we are in year 6 or 7, and he gets a bill for that surgery from that long ago. This is the same nonsense that these healthcare institutions continue to do. The drug companies and the companies that provide services, they're all about the bottom line. And when they find out they're screwed up, or whether they did or not, most of these things like surgeries, unless it's cosmetic surgery, and then even cosmetic surgery under certain circumstances is allowed by insurance. So other than that, it's usually covered. And if a hospital or an institution fails to do its due diligence 6 or 7 years after, I think they pretty much have to eat that bill. Because first of all, let's think about it. Did that bill really float for 6 or 7 years, or did they write it off in their taxes after the end of the first year? And now they're trying to recoup what would be, or trying to get what would be pure profit. So I hope my friend gets through with that. I hope he's successful. I hope he stands his ground. I hope he refuses to pay. I know if it goes to the point where they're adamant, they're going to threaten him with collection and mess up his credit score and all these things. But we have to stand, and we have to stand united. We have to join. We have to figure out ways to come together and brainstorm to how to boycott, how to impact these companies and their bottom line. Make them think twice about doing stupid things, because they're an organization, we're individuals, and they figure that they can crush us and get what they want. In the meantime, many situations result in it being a stressor for someone. And in the worst case scenarios, it's the last straw for people who feel that they have nothing else to live for and they take their own lives. Suicides are usually caused by stresses. People wonder sometimes how the nicest person, the happiest person they see commit suicide. It's usually something going on in their life, and then there's a stressor, that one last thing that puts them over the edge. And if you're dealing with student loans and paying your mortgage and paying your rent, and maybe struggling with a child, or something's going on in your life, or a relationship or a marriage, and you've had it up to above your head, and then a bill comes in from 6 or 7 years ago and says you owe us how many $1,000 and you have to pay, depending on how where you are mentally, that could be the last stressor. So this won't be the last episode, or that wouldn't be the last episode about the healthcare companies, but we have to keep pushing. And if you have stories, if you have situations, reach out to me. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out together. There are pro bono lawyers and all these people out there that we have to source. There are people out there willing to help. We have to find them and utilize those services to fight back. So it's not more of a monetary impact to you. I know a lot of people will say, well, I don't want to do this because it's going to cost me money. In many cases, if you join together and there's a large enough number, even someone who does not normally do for-profit legal work may decide to do it because of what you represent and the size of your movement. So join me, join 247 Real Talk Podcast in moving things forward. Now we're going to move on to this week's episode. And I'm targeting the food industry this episode. And when I say food, I mean restaurants, food places, people who cater to us when we go out and choose to patronize them and expect them to take care of what we put in our bodies. You remember during COVID, the food industry suffered greatly. People weren't going to restaurants, people were not eating out, people were confined to their homes. Many of them closed down, many of them struggled, and many of them begged us when COVID was over to come back. So I'm going to sort of take one step back and tell you where I'm coming from. And in this episode, I'm going to cite 3 cases of people who dealt with food, with restaurants and food places, who ended up either dying or becoming really sick because of the negligence of someone in that process. I personally suffer from severe allergies. I don't believe they're they're severe. I don't know about life-threatening, but they're probably one step behind that. Each and every week for the last 3 years so far, I get 2 injections every Thursday. So earlier today, I got 2 injections of allergy shots. And I've been getting them for 3 years. And the whole process and ideology behind allergy shots is they keep giving you the things, little by little, the serum of the things that you're allergic to, so that they're hoping to build up a resistance in your body, so eventually you don't react to those things anymore because your body becomes used to them. I keep getting setbacks. I keep having setbacks because they give you every week, and then they get to a point where your system can tolerate such a high dose, they move to every month. Twice already, right before we moved to every month, I went to get my injection, and all of a sudden the injection spots swole up, itching, hives, the whole 9. and they had to back the doses down to a dosage I could tolerate again. So that was 2 setbacks so far. Now, people wonder, when you have allergies, many people take it for granted. If you see me looking down, I'm switching up to get ready. That's me. Okay, let me cut away from that for a second and show you what I'm talking about. Now, that's me, right? I have severe allergies. It starts off with just walking around normally and you feel a little like bump at the top of your lip. And within 30 to 60 seconds, maybe 90 seconds, you have a severe reaction. When it gets severe enough that it kills you, it means that it goes from the edema in your lips and it goes down to your throat, and your throat swells and it closes up and you can't breathe and you die. I brought up that picture a little prematurely. I should have warned you, and I'm going to warn those of you on YouTube again that it's a little grotesque. And I am showing myself to you here. So look at my face now, and then look at my face here. That was me on the railroad, heading home from work one day, sitting on the train, and within seconds that happened. It was environmental. Now, I should tell you that I did allergy testing 3 years ago. I did allergy testing. I do it every year almost. But 3 years ago when I started, when things had gotten that bad, and that picture I showed you, that was happening like twice or 3 times a week. So I went to the allergist, and they gave me these things they put on your hand. They put 30 of them each in your hand. They feel like little needles. And they actually are supposed to penetrate the skin just slightly. And then they leave them on there for a certain period of time. And when they take them off, if you have any bumps where the needles penetrated, whatever needles correspond to those bumps, that's what you're allergic to. When I went in, because of my severe allergies, they put 30 needles on each hand, 60 environmental irritants, 60 environmental things that cause allergies, some severe, is what they tested me for. When they removed the testing equipment, I showed up allergic to all 60. They then sent me for blood tests. I can't remember exactly, but I remember that even things I was not allergic to as a child, I remember the blood work coming back and telling me I was allergic to bananas, allergic to dust mites, allergic to roaches, allergic to shellfish. Well, I knew shellfish all my life, but there was about 7 or 8 things in addition to the 60 things that were environmental. And so the result of what happens in split seconds, I'm switching back, a warning again to those of you who, it's a gross picture. That's what happened. And I'm going to switch to another picture here. That was another occasion. And when you get that happening to you, look at my face now and look at it then. Your entire head, your face is swollen, your cheeks are swollen, under your eyes are swollen. That's what happens. And so you have to understand that these things happen to people, and in the severe cases, you die. So I'm going to, if you give me a second here, I'm going to reach over to my tablet here, and I'm going to start talking about the cases I wanted to refer to this episode. Give me 1 second. I earmarked 3 cases that I want this to be about, because I think that I don't want them to sort of go unnoticed and go away. The first one is this dancer. This happened a couple of months ago. The dancer, I think she was 23 years old, went into Stu Leonard's. She would frequently go there and buy cookies. And her peanut allergies were so severe, and let me just jump in to say, I am lucky I can eat peanuts, oddly enough. I can't eat shellfish, but I can eat peanuts. Her peanut allergies are so severe that for her, they're a quick death. So I understand, even because of the things I'm allergic to, that when you go to look for certain foods, you're very careful. And she went in and she looked for cookies in a section or whatever that would be peanut free. She had apparently purchased there before. And she checked the packaging to make sure that there was no peanuts in it. She double and triple checked, she said, or someone who was with her said. Then she went home, opened the cookies, ate a couple, and died within a minute or two. It turns out that someone in that process failed us as the public who's patronizing these places. Somehow the company that packages the cookies for Stu Leonard's is saying that they notified Stu Leonard's that the ingredients had changed and whoever was responsible for wrapping the cookies did not make the changes in the packaging. Do we care? Someone buried their 23-year-old sister, their 23-year-old mother, I'm not sure if she was a mother, their 23-year-old daughter, their 23-year-old sister, their 23-year-old grandchild, simply because they went to enjoy a cookie. And the world out there that's so much into profit took their patrons for granted. Someone did. This is in litigation. I'm not in the blame game here in terms of which entity, right? I don't know who. The courts will decide whether it was Stu Leonard, whether it was the packager, whether it was the manufacturer. That's a legal issue. My point is, every step along the way, people have to understand that the smallest role you have in a process, especially when serving the public, is as critical as the biggest role. Think for a second, as I digress, about the passengers on that Hawaiian Air Boeing jet, Boeing jet, that where the plug, they're calling it a plug, blew out to the side, and there was a big gaping hole in the side of the plane. And thankfully enough, they're not too long left or about to land wherever it was. They were able to get back down to the ground and save the lives of all those passengers. And recently I heard that the Justice Department has opened a case into this incident because there's a roster of 20-something people who worked on that plane, who were responsible for that part of the plane and those plugs. And they're trying to get down to who decided to be so negligent and careless in their process. Imagine a plane is made up of so many little pieces, and understand that a plane deals with tremendous forces when it takes off and it's flying. The pressure, the reason the cabin is pressurized is if the cabin was not pressurized, the plane would implode. The pressurization is equaling the external pressure so the plane's body maintains its shape. And if you ever look at those shows where they build these planes, it might be a little scary, but they don't even bolt them anymore. They glue them. There is some type of glue, and I've actually watched this on one of the TV shows when they're building planes, where they glue the pieces together, and that glue actually holds. So when someone does something like a plug that holds a panel of a plane and doesn't do it properly and it blows out, that one person, in their carelessness, in lack of detail, maybe their phone rang and they had to take a call, or maybe they were texting someone, could have caused 200 and something people, how many other people on that plane, to lose their lives that day. So we go back to the stories I want to bring up. I'm going to the second one because I don't want to make the episode too long. Not too long ago, this happens in this month, in March, early March. A doctor from Long Island died from anaphylactic shock, right, after eating at Disney Springs restaurant. There's a lawsuit. So according to the story, and I read it last night, so I remember it, she and her husband spoke to the waitress, I'm not sure which one it was, and explained to them that they needed their meals to be nut-free and dairy-free. Now, dairy is also a severe allergy. My son had dairy allergies when he was small, and it was horrendous. And so they took the time, and the waiter or waitress assured them above and beyond that of how their meals were prepared, and that they should not have any concern about dairy or nuts. Suffice to say that young female doctor who worked at a prestigious hospital in Long Island lost her life. And I think I read in the story where they said she used the EpiPen, and still it wasn't enough. Whatever they gave her and whatever the ingredients were was so severe that even the EpiPen didn't save her. pause. Let's pause for a second. Let's pause on EpiPen. I showed you my pictures just now. I gave a picture of my soul, my private space of what I endured. I haven't endured it recently since my allergy shots, but what I would endure 2-3 times a week. Despite my severe allergies, thankfully, my throat, there's only one time my throat ever felt like it would close up and I would be in trouble. And I'll tell you real quick about that. I remember it vividly. I used to live in an apartment. I was sitting at the window looking out on the road, and I was eating this French vanilla yogurt that I ate dozens of times before. I loved the French vanilla flavor. It was a particular brand, and I had made sure the ingredients didn't include, I forgot the name of the ingredient, but there's an ingredient that people with my allergies, it can affect, and it said it didn't. I sat at the window, I'm eating the yogurt, and then I licked my lips, and when I lick my lips, I feel this instant bump. And it's amazing. You have to experience it to understand. Your lips can be normal, and the minute you put your tongue on your lip, whatever your tongue does with your saliva and whatever that ingredient is, it immediately pops up, like instantaneously. And within a couple of minutes, my lips were swollen larger than both of those pictures I showed in this episode. I started to panic a bit because it felt like the swelling was continuing down my neck, and my thing was, I was alone. At the time I was living alone, and I was pretty sure I was going to die. Those were the days when you could call your doctor and you could actually get a hold of your doctor. I didn't call right away. I can't remember. I think it was in the evening and I couldn't get him. I started drinking a lot of water, and drinking the water was psychological because somehow I remember I was in such a panic that I felt if I drank water and the water went down, that meant my throat was still open. Now, I have to tell you that in 80% of the case, maybe 90% of the cases in my allergic reactions, that edema, that swelling of the lips, goes away in 5-6 hours, maybe a little longer. That day with the yogurt, my lips kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Eventually, they stopped at a grotesque place, and it was night. I went to sleep, and I said, well, I'm going to go to sleep. If I stop breathing in my sleep, well, that's the way to go, right? In your sleep. So I figured if that didn't happen when I woke up in the morning, my lips would have gone back down, which has happened before. I woke up next morning, my lips were just as big. I called my doctor. He said, come to see me right away, now. I went to my doctor. I got to the doctor's office. I went in the waiting room, and they're like, doctor, you have to see him now. Went in there, and my lips were still huge. This is now 15 hours later, 18 hours later. My doctor gave me medication, or I think he prescribed, I don't remember the events, but I got medication that reduced the swelling. And even with the medication, it took another almost 24 hours for my lips to go down. And I say all that to go back to the EpiPen. If I had an EpiPen at that time, I could have used it to help reverse what happened. I didn't. So my doctor said, you know what? We can't take this chance. You have to have an EpiPen. I remember at the time, the title I was in at my job, I was in a union, had union insurance. And the brand EpiPen, I was shocked that I got it for $10. So I would start to get the EpiPen every year because it would last about a year before you had to refresh it. And I remember one year, I don't remember what changed in my insurance, but I went to get the EpiPen. They were like $150. I'm like, whoa, no. They said, well, let's try the generic. They tried the generic, and the generic was $10. So somehow I think it was the same insurance had switched what they paid for. Fast forward to today. My most recent visit for my renewal for my allergy shots, they're like, look, you need to have an EpiPen. There's another company that makes something similar to EpiPen. I don't remember the name of it, the name of the brand. But they checked with them, put it through the insurance, came back, and it says, well, they don't cover it. It's $150. And I said, nah, it's either just generic or the brand. One's going to be covered. So then I asked the doctor, can you submit the brand then, I think it was generic wasn't covered, to CVS. So what CVS does is they run it through their system. If insurance doesn't cover it, they send you a message, say, hey, your insurance doesn't cover it. CVS says $120. If you want, you can come pick it up, but you'll have to pay $120. My choice, right? So recently, I found that my insurance, I also have a dual insurance. I can use Express Scripts. And if anybody knows if you guys know who Express Scripts are, it's a prescription company, and it covers, it's great sometimes because their pharmacies are countrywide. So a lot of times when prescriptions or medication is hard to get from a local pharmacy, you can get it through Express Scripts, and they deliver it right to your house within a day, overnight. So they sent the prescription to Express Scripts. I'm waiting to hear, I think I mentioned this in my last episode. The prescription shows up with a bill for $120. But you never told me how much it was under under Express Scripts. So I call them. Oh no, we don't do that unless once it's less than $150, we fill it and we send it to you. Well, I didn't give you permission to fill it, so I don't want this for $120. Well, we don't take it back. You're going to have to pay it. You have 90 days, otherwise it goes to collections. And they were done with me. My point is, as we tie in responsibilities of all these industries, why is it that the medications that are life or death situations, that save your life in an instant, are the ones that the insurance companies refuse to cover? Look at the games they play. For all of you who've had young kids, who've had babies, do you remember buying Pampers as a baby and wondering, you got this little baby, this little pamper, you have maybe 80 in a pack, and it's almost 1.5 times the Pampers of the bigger kid, where they use more material, where it's almost the same amount in the pack. Why? Because they know that babies change Pampers 5-6 times a day, right? So we're going to jack up the price because you have no choice. And this is the same thing. You know that an EpiPen, even I think every ambulance carries one. It's literally for people who have the kind of peanut allergy where they have about 90 seconds, because I think in 3 minutes you're dead. After 90 seconds, you lose your ability to function, your hand, you'll be losing oxygen to that level. So you have 90 seconds to know where it is, to grab it, to pop the top, to stab it on your leg and hit that button so that needle goes into your leg or wherever you get to jab it. The leg is usually the quickest place. Think about that. And they make that prohibitive for many people who can't afford to pay or struggling to pay their bills and their rent, but who have kids with a peanut allergy. Now, if it's hereditary, like shellfish in my family is hereditary. So if it's hereditary peanut allergy and you have multiple kids, if you have multiple kids who have the allergy, you can't have one EpiPen for all the kids. Each kid has to have their EpiPen. So when you're going to charge them $120 each, imagine that. And then if it's hereditary and it came from you, the adult, and you have it as well, what are you spending? $400 or $500 in EpiPens? And then after the year passes, you're thankful to say, thank God nothing happened this year. We were safe. I didn't have to use it. Now you got to refresh it and pay $120 again for each one? Come on. We have got to do better for each other as human beings. We cannot continue to put money over lives. We have to live our responsibilities, not only in terms of value of life, but again, going back to the original context of this episode, about our importance in the part of a process that we play a major role in that can impact people's lives forever. Time's getting on, so I'm going to go to the last one. The last one is a good story in the sense that the child lived. 3-year-old child in Brooklyn, New York, named Jesse. Jesse wanted ice cream. There was a Carvel that sold non-dairy ice cream down the block. Father took him to there, confirmed that it was non-dairy. Jesse had 1 scoop of ice cream, 1 scoop, 1 taste, and went into severe vomiting and anaphylactic shock. They rushed him to hospital, and it took a cocktail of medications to save his life. 3-year-old is alive today. But what happened to the non-dairy ice cream? You know, I sometimes have a conversation with my wife where she says, I don't drink tap water because I have filters on my sinks too, at least one of them. And we have a countertop filter that, filters water, or we drink bottled water. And sometimes she say to me, I'll never drink tap water. Even though New York City says it's okay, I'll drink bottled water. I said, why? She said, because I don't want whatever comes through the tap. And I said to myself sometimes, I really wonder, these companies are so greedy. And I vaguely remember a water company being charged with something years ago where they said it was well water, but it was not. When these companies are mass producing these things, what stops them from chemically altering their water, or not even not, and just putting tap water into your bottle from a different state? Who is standing there looking at their process and making sure they're following the rules? We know if it's up to the people who own these companies and they see they can make more money if they don't have to maybe go to the well and have trucks truck in the water and then put it through this chemical process and burn this electricity, and they're producing millions of bottles of water, but if they can just actually get a bunch of taps and turn them on and fill your bottles and put them through the thing, slap the label, and you drink it and say, that's good water. Who checks all of that? When I looked at the statistics of the people in the last 10 years who have gotten sick or died from anaphylactic shock after eating at an establishment, it's a large list. We take it for granted because our world is so busy with so many things to give us headaches that we don't even pay attention to the simplest things. I pay attention to it because I showed you pictures, I'm not going to put them up again, of the effect little things have on me. And how debilitating it is to me, how close I can get to not being here to record another episode because I went to eat somewhere and they didn't honor my patronage. Years ago, I went to a restaurant that has a seafood name, I'm not going to call it. And when I went in there, I was with others who were eating seafood, and I told the waiter, I said, look, I'm seriously allergic to shellfish. I'm ordering, I said, I have a steak or whatever I order. I said, you have to speak to the chef. If you cannot have clean utensils and a clean, whatever you use to make my dinner, then let me know and I won't eat. I'll still sit here with my friends. No, sir, we spoke to the chef. We will speak to the chef. Came back, the chef says, no problem. I sit at the table, I get my food, I take a few bites, I look up, I see people staring at me and the waiter running over to me. Someone in my group had a mirror and they were staring at me. They said, look, it looked like if you had taken a piece of wood and put nails in it or screws and run it down my face. Suffice to say, they comped the meal, right? They profusely apologized. But that day, that was my reaction. I didn't have an EpiPen. That's another time it could have been the end of my life because someone didn't care enough to honor the very people who make sure they have jobs. So as we continue to hold industries and people accountable, when things like this happen and you become aware of them, let me know. Email me at podcast@247realtalk.net. You don't even have to do the investigations behind it. I will. And I will find out, and I will come on, I will talk about it, and I'll call the names, and I'll put it on blast, and I will reach out to the Attorney General's office if I have to, so the Attorney General and her office are aware of what's going on. We've got to use all avenues we have to make a difference in every way of our lives, so that every area of our lives that are part of that quilt that make sure we have decent lives are properly handled and respectfully handled. As I said, I wanted to talk about this because I came across these 3 stories, 2 of which, a woman from Long Island, the other one's a dancer, I think she's New York too, died. And this little 3-year-old boy almost died because of the carelessness of someone. A whole plane load of people almost died because of the carelessness of someone who felt that I got a job and getting paid. I can't maybe put down my cell phone and do whatever and focus on what I do, because even if it's a matter of pressing a button, it could be a critical part in the end product that determines whether someone lives or dies. And that's a lesson for all of us as well. take our responsibilities in what we do very, very carefully and pay attention to what we're responsible for. A lot of people say, oh, my job, I just do this, I just do that, No, your just will have some scenario where if you do it properly, you could be responsible for saving someone's life. That ends the episode for this week. I went way longer than I expected, but I hope you found it interesting. Again, I will invite you to subscribe, to like, to share the podcast. It's really important. As I told you, I had my hard drive, my HD, my high definition drive that I record these podcasts on die this week. Replacing that, which I had to do immediately on the spot. They should arrive tomorrow, the replacement. They're quite expensive. This podcast I do out of my own pocket because it's my service to you, to the community, to the one person in the world I might help. And it's the way I earn my place in my belief to occupy a space on this earth and to honor my Father who art in heaven. I pray that you have an amazing week ahead. I pray that you are safe, that you take the time to listen to this podcast, to share it to your Facebook, share it to your to put the link on your Instagram. It's a little thing, but it will go a long way to helping this channel. Not only help me with the cost, but I want to go beyond that to the point where I have enough subscribers where I have the sponsors who are relevant, who are honorable, and I can use that income to start funding efforts, funding ideas that we come up with to help, whether it be helping kids in some way, whether it be giving one kid money for the semester, whether it be helping a sick kid, whether it be helping a sick adult, whatever. This commitment I've made is for the rest of my life. Whether one person watches or 1 million people, I will not stop. And I thank you for the support and encouragement you've given me to never stop. I've got some of you, my viewers, who are tenacious in supporting me, tenacious in making sure you reach out to me every Friday, giving me words of encouragement and giving me the fuel to keep going. I've watched the numbers tick up both on the audio-only podcast and on YouTube. And I'll be satisfied when we are generating enough because we have enough audience who are interested and are part of this movement to make our lives better. Once again, thank you. I'm humbled. I'm grateful. Until the next time, take care of yourselves and please take care of each other.